أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah everybody for arriving on time, early in fact. Apologies for the minute's delay. Okay, so welcome lovely students. And let me, before I get into this, start the class with our prayers. Let me select a student. So let's select 311. Assalamu alaikum. Tamsila Saiba.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, darling. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Okay, so sweetheart, you know that we always start by asking Allah for His help in our learning, and we do our dua at the beginning of the class. Would you be able to recite Dawood? That's on the screen.
Yes.
Okay, then everybody else, please listen carefully and also repeat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Okay, and today is Tuesday, so here we are.
ربي زدني علما.
Mashallah, mashallah. Very, very nice. Jazakumullah for a lovely start to the class, darling. Assalamu alaikum for now. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so before we get going with our teaching today, I want to let you know that we have at ITQA an annual award ceremony held annually once a year. And the second one is coming up on the 29th of January. So this ceremony is going to go across the whole world. It's international. So we would like NL1 students to take part in the activities. Okay. And here is some information on your screen as to the activities. Okay, so there is Tilawat, a translation of the Tilawat, a reading of a hadith and the translation of the hadith, as well as this a saying of the Promised Messiah Islam. There will also be a nazm and a nazm translation. Okay, now let me tell you about those activities and I'll come back to how you can apply. So here is the Tilawat, okay, that you can record if you want to take part in this activity and ask to be considered. If you record it and then send it to ITQA, and if you do, you need to make sure that inside of the recording you write you say Tilawat. You also say your name, you say your student ID, and you say your course ID, which would be NL1 UK MC17. Okay, and that's really important that you say it within the recording, because then we'll definitely be able to identify you if we select you. But when you email it in, please make sure in the subject box that your mum and dad write down Tilawat, your name, the student ID and the course ID in the subject box, because otherwise it might be difficult to find. Okay, so make sure that that gets written. This will be the translation, and the same thing, read that and record it, and do the same thing as before. Include your details in the recording as well as write them in the subject box of the email. Here is the hadith, okay, the root at the start of it, and then again, if you say hadith Arabic and then your name, ID, course ID inside of the recording, as well as writing that on the subject box of the email. Here is the translation. So again, if you just read it nice and slow, very clear English, okay, so that we can hear how well you are able to read it. This is the same principle. And here is the saying of the Promised Messiah Islam. Okay, so this is in Urdu. Yeah, so even if you can't read Urdu, maybe your mum and dad can help you. And so long as your pronunciation is good, okay, we can consider. And here again is the nazm, okay, and yeah, so if you can recite that, then please also record that and then send that to us. And here in English is the translation. Okay, so now if I go back quickly to the beginning, okay, this particular PDF and all of the information I've just shown you is actually in the chat right now. So you can actually download it from there. Your teachers also have a copy. And if for any reason you can't get hold of it from your teacher and you can't for any reason download it from the chat, if you get in touch with us, okay, then we can send it to you by email as well. Okay, so if you get in touch with us. Now, if you look in the white box at the bottom, it says here, who can apply to be considered. So it's students of ITQA, and it has to be Atfal members or Nazirah. Okay, so it's just for Nazirah up until obviously the age of 15 and members of Atfal. And if you can submit your recordings so that they reach us by Sunday, the 15th of January. So it's this weekend, okay? Email them to students@idgham.org.uk. And again, just a reminder that you have to state the activity and your ID as well as the course ID in the subject box. So remember, this is worldwide, okay? So it's international. We'll have a special guest. It's Amir Saab from Canada. And I'm sure your mums and dads would very much like you to participate. And as NL1 teachers, we also want you to represent us. So please have a look at the activities and send in your recordings. Okay, so that's that. Okay, also in your chat, you will find a link to a form. In the award ceremony, we would like to display some feedback from yourselves that we can display on the screen with your names and other details. And if you have something to say, or your parents have something to say with you, then if you can ask them to write what you want to say in that form, okay? And if it's a very simple form, just write what you want to say. If you are a member of Atfal, or if you're a Nazirah under the age of 10, you can also make a video recording and then send that to us by email as well. Okay, and the instructions are in the form. It's a very simple form. We would love to hear feedback from yourselves as to what your experience at ITQA is, and then that can, inshallah, be displayed in the award ceremony. That link to that form is also available from your teachers. But if you can't, for some reason, download it from the chat and you can't get it from a teacher, if you contact us, then we can get that to you. Okay, and the email address that you can use to get that can be this one here, the students@idgham.org.uk, but it can also be this one in the red, contact@idgham.org.uk. And that's the one that you're best off using, okay? All right, okay, so that's that. Now let's move on to our schedule for today. So today we're going to start on a rule known as Idgham, and a certain, there are several different rules within that Idgham, and today we're going to focus on Idgham Kamil. Yesterday we introduced you to the idea of Idgham, but today we're going to look more closely. In your practice, in your breakout rooms, you will go and practice from Surah Al-Anfal, verses 1 to 7. Please make sure you do stay until the end and come back to the main session where your homework will be assigned. Yesterday we introduced this. We're just going to recap it very briefly. In NL1, on this level, we will look at a group of rules of Noon, Sakin, and Tanween, and they are known as Idgham. Now, yesterday, the teacher pointed out to you a reminder of some things that you know, that there are some strokes known as Fathatain, Kasratain, and Dhammatain. And those strokes, although they have their own names, collectively they're known as Tanween. And Tanween means to make a nasal sound. Okay? So it's important that you know that Tanween is a collective term, and what it means to make a nasal sound. She also reminded you something that you know, that when you see a noon with a sukoon on the top, it's known as a noon sakin. And with the noon, there's always going to be some sort of nasal sound most of the time. Okay, so that was a recap for you yesterday. And then she pointed out to you that when it's idgham, that you need to look out, okay? If you see a noon sakin or a letter that carries a tanween, when you see something like that, understand that a nasal sound of some sort will be made. And there are rules that tell you what that nasal sound is going to be. It's the next letter after a noon sakin or tanween that decides what nasal sound, if any, is going to be made. So it's really important that you look at the next letter. As soon as you see a noon sakin, as soon as you see a tanween, look at the next letter. And these few lessons that we're going to do are going to tell you what you have to do according to the letter. Okay, so yesterday also the teacher went through some examples and she said, let's listen to how noon sakin and tanween are read in practice. And I'm just going to pick up on a couple of the things that she did. Okay, so here on your screen, you can see a noon sakin inside of that red oval. And when you recite it, listen really carefully as I recite that verse and listen to what I do with that noon sakin. Okay, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Okay, so from here, okay, let me get my hand here. Walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. One more time. Walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Now, if you listen closely, you'd have realized that I didn't make any sort of nasal sound whatsoever. Even though there's a noon there, I didn't say anything to do with the noon. I read this as kullahu. Okay, let's look at another example. In the highlighted bit, you can see a lam with a dhammatain. There's a tanween, okay? So let's just listen to how I read, okay, that tanween, okay? فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. One more time. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Now, there's a tanween there. Normally, we've been teaching you that when you see a tanween, there should be a 2-second nasal sound. But if you listened really closely, you would have realized that I made no nasal sound whatsoever, okay? I did this as if this was just one dhamma, lul, lil, okay? So, although there was a tanween here, and there was a noon sakin there, I made no nasal sound. And that's what we're going to look at today, why I didn't make that nasal sound. So we're going to look today at what to do when you see a noon sakin or tanween, and straight afterwards is a mushaddad ra or a mushaddad lam. And if I remind you again here, look, there's a tanween, straight afterwards was a mushaddad lam, and here there was a noon sakin, but straight afterwards there was a mushaddad lam, okay? So those are the two examples we've just used, okay? When you see a noon sakin or any tanween, and straight afterwards is a mushaddad ra or a mushaddad lam, make no nasal sound. Okay, so that's the rule, make no nasal sound. You see a noon sakin, you see a tanween. Straight afterwards is a mushaddad ra, make no nasal sound. Straight afterwards is a lam mushaddad, make no nasal sound. And the name for that is Idgham Kamil. Idgham Kamil. So always remember, Idgham Kamil refers to when you see a noon sakin or a tanween, and straight afterwards is a ra mushaddad or a lam mushaddad. And it's as simple as that. Now, let me just go through some examples in the a moment that I have. If I call student to the mic, let me call 3122. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, darling. Okay, sweetheart. So very quickly, before we go to our breakout rooms, you could be my chief helper in just reading some examples of Idgham Kamil. Okay, so I'm going to read, if you can follow with me. Okay, here we've got a noon sakin. Straight afterwards is a lam mushaddad. The rule is, if you see a noon sakin and straight afterwards is a lam mushaddad, you make no nasal sound. When you read this, you have to read it as if the noon sakin wasn't there. So you read it as mil, milladunka,
Milladunka.
mashallah. Okay, here we have a tanween in the blue. Straight afterwards, the rule is if you see a tanween, look at the next letter. If it's a lam mushaddad, you make no nasal sound. Read it as if it's just a normal dhamma there. So this is how we'll read this. Khayrul lakum.
Khayrul lakum.
Mashallah. Here, okay, noon sakin. The rule is, if you see a noon sakin, look at the next letter. If it's a ra mushaddad, there is no nasal sound. You read it as if the noon wasn't there. So this is how to read this. Mir rabbihim.
Mir rabbihim.
Mashallah. Here, we see a tanween. Tell me, darling, what is the rule when you see a tanween?
When you see a tanween and after it's a ra, then you make no nasal sound.
Well done, mashallah, perfect. So this is how we read this. Ra'ufur Rahim.
Ra'ufur Rahim.
Mashallah, mashallah. Okay, here, noon sakin. Tell me what the rule is when you see a noon sakin.
If you see a lam in front of the noon sakin, then you make no nasal sound.
Well done. Yes, the lam has to be straight after the noon sakin. Okay, and you read it as if there's no noon there. So this is read as Allah.
Allah.
Mashallah. Okay, here. Then we follow straight afterwards by a lam mushaddad, so we make no nasal sound. This will be read as musfarallazallu.
Musfarallazallu.
Mashallah, very, very nice. So you read it as if there was just a normal fatha there. Okay, let's go to, we've done the, okay, let's do this, okay? Noon sakin, straight after is a ra mushaddad. So we make no nasal sound. We read it as if the noon isn't there. Mirro hillahi.
Mirro hillahi.
Mashallah. One more here. Then we, straight after is a ra mushaddad, so we make no nasal sound. We read that as if it's a single kasra. Rabbir Rahim.
Rabbir Rahim.
Mashallah, mashallah. Okay, so that's enough practice. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.